Yeah.
So we're going to get started. I'm Chase. I'm the doctor here at the office. I'm glad all of y'all had a chance to come out. How many of you heard about this meeting tonight just through like Facebook? Raise your hand. Through the Meetup group itself, like an email blast from the Meetup group or something? Okay. And they were brought from by someone. Awesome. Well, we're glad y'all had a chance to come out. Your friends encouraged you to come out tonight. I'm excited to be here tonight. This is exciting to talk with other people that share similar concepts as I do. Sometimes when talking with patients, it can be a little bit brutal, trying to explain what we do and why we do it. And the headlights that kind of just look at you in the eyes, you're trying to explain why we should avoid certain foods. It's kind of weird sometimes. So, hey, how's it going?
Hello.
Welcome aboard.
Thanks.
We are recording tonight, mostly because we had a request from some people that weren't able to come to stream it. If you haven't noticed, my office smells like paint. We're brand new here. We moved in last night at midnight. So Monday morning at midnight, we moved into this office after being officeless for 3 days because of the switch in schedules of leases and everything like that. So we're in the middle of painting up until about 5:30, 5:45. We were still putting rollers on the walls and stuff like that in some of the rooms. Had to clean up everything. My kids were running around, 3, 5, and 7-year-old, and they were all cleaning up trash and running out to the dumpster and apparently playing in the dumpster is what some people are saying. So it's been a little bit hectic here over the last couple of days, but we're glad everyone had a chance to come and do this. So we're going to record these tonight, and then what I'll do is I'll sit down and kind of hash the videos together in connection with like some slideshows as we put together this whole talk or conversation. My goal is for this to be as laid back as possible, and for you guys not to feel like I'm lecturing at you, but just for us to talk and answer questions. The ultimate goal, how long do y'all normally meet up? Because I can go all night. I mean, I can talk like everybody's business. But if you want to go like 45 minutes, I can try and go for 45 minutes too. 45. All right, cool. So in that case, our first 15 minutes or so, I'm going to put forth some just information. Then the next like 15 to 20 minutes, I want to demonstrate to you guys how you can see what works for you at home, what doesn't work for you at home. And we're going to have potential volunteers come up on the table, and I'm going to show some stuff. And then I'll answer any questions you want until you decide to leave after that. And if we stop in about 45 minutes or so, that'd be great. If not, like I said, I can go all night and I have no problem talking and just discussing this type of stuff. So I'm Chase. I'm a doctor of chiropractic by profession here in the state of Texas, but I have emphasis in clinical neurology and clinical nutrition. So in my practice, I see a lot of everything. Generally, people come to see me when they haven't had the results they're looking for in one way or another. You know, they have symptoms, they go to the doctor, they do blood tests, they're told they're normal, they have a bunch of issues, they end up here somehow. Or they go to the doctor, they're told they have all kinds of weird jacked up stuff and they want to try a non-medicinal route or surgical route, or they're going through chemo and radiation and they try and do some other natural stuff at the same time. And that's how people end up to see me. In the back is Danielle. She graduates from chiropractic school in December and will be working here in the office as a future doctor. She has a strong emphasis in sports medicine and nutrition as well. So between us and my wife, who snuck out earlier with our kids, we run the show here at the office, and we try and make things happen for everyday people and for ourselves. When it comes to nutrition, though, the concept for today's talk, per se, has to do with how we can use food, specifically the way we were designed to eat ancestrally, to change the symptomatology or the pathology that we have currently going on. So, when people wake up one day and they're told they have type 2 diabetes, that didn't just happen. That was a lifestyle habit that eventually eroded into a disease process, and therefore they had these symptoms. With diabetes, typically we see the overweight or the obesity, we see the numbness and tingling, we see the vision changes, we see a bunch of the body just breaking down due to the effects of not being able to put the fork down. But it doesn't have to stop there. Food affects how we move in every aspect of our lives. So when people come in to me because they can't get pregnant and have infertility, well, we look at their diet first. When people come in because they have thyroid problems and can't lose weight, we look at their diet first. When people come in with back pain because they're a chiropractor and they look up and say, oh, Chase is a chiropractor, let's go see him, we look at diet first. Because something happened in their body to set them up for the opportunity to get out of bed, put on their shoes, and hurt their back. So what was it that happened to do that? Now, it's possible they were in the car wreck the day before and they had all these traumatic injuries, but if someone wasn't in a car wreck and they're having issues, our first step here in the office is to look to see what they're putting into their body that prepared them to not be able to perform at the level they want to. Whether it's cardiovascular disease, hormone dysfunction, joints and aches and pains, poor sports performance, whatever it might be. We look to food first. Because that's how we've always done it. Now, chiropractic is a relatively new profession. 1895, the first chiropractor performed a manipulation of somebody, and chiropractic was born from there. So what did people do from Adam and Eve to 1895, or from caveman to 1895? They obviously did other things besides getting their back cracked 3 times a week for the rest of their life. So we step back and we try and look and see what is it that someone could change to help with whatever it might be. And so my chiropractic friends aren't fans of that because we look at things differently. And some of the surgeon friends of mine aren't fans of that because we look at things differently. But if you're a hammer and everything looks like a nail, well, then all you have to do is what your scope of practice tells you should do. So some of our chiropractors, everything's a back problem. We just crack backs till the cows come home, and then people don't get themselves better. Well, if you're a surgeon, then we cut till the cows come home, and their problems keep coming back. Well, all of us have to eat, though. And if we can eat the appropriate foods in the appropriate ways that our bodies are designed for, then we tend to stave off a lot of other issues, and we can use these certain types of services for people like me or from other more advanced specialties for emergency type situations. So there's a really good book that, if you don't have it, I strongly encourage you to get it. This is Weston A. Price's book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. This book is one of my absolute favorites because there's a lot of controversy among people that eat similar to how many of us probably eat in the room, between paleo and primal or vegetarian or vegan or whatever it might be. This guy said, you know what, in 1929-ish or so, he went on a voyage across the world and saw a bunch of different indigenous societies. He said, what happens when we look at the Inuit Eskimos and we look for those people that have never been introduced to modernized food? And he's a dentist by profession. He took a bunch of dental analysis and personal histories and family histories of these individuals that had never been exposed to refined flour, refined wheat, maple syrup, things like that. And he found that for most of them, they didn't have the cancers, they didn't have the arterial plaquing or the atherosclerosis, they didn't have cavities, even though they ate blubber and fish and fat and berries all their life. And then as soon as those people moved off to an industrialized civilization like Anchorage, Alaska, or something like that, and they were introduced to Western food, within 1 generation there were changes. There were facial changes to the joint structure, so they all became nose breathers. Their teeth started rotting and falling out earlier. They started developing cancer. They started having a bunch of issues. He said, okay, great. These people eat well fat, blubber, fish all day long. That's probably the way we should do it. And then he goes out to like Switzerland. In Switzerland, they mostly ate whole grains, tomatoes, vegetables. They had red meat about once a week based off of where they lived in the Swiss Alps. And those people, when they ate their ancestral diet, no cavities, no dental issues. They didn't have closed, narrow faces. They were nose breathers instead of mouth breathers. They had all these things that you saw that he saw with the Eskimos or the Inuit Indians. But as soon as 1 generation later, they started eating refined foods, refined flours, refined whatevers, all those similar changes happened to them, even though their ancestral dietary system was different. And he ended up going through a bunch of different civilizations. And the coolest thing about it is he took a bunch of pictures. So he took these kids and he said, these guys obviously are refined food eaters. And then he would find someone else that, like these people, that were not refined food eaters. You can see distinct differences between dental health and facial structures. And he does it through every civilization that he found. Consistent characteristics, no matter where in the world you were from, that if you ate how your ancestors ate, you did fine. When you ate how modern day food, refined foods, refined flour, refined sugars were, then immediately, within 1 generation, changes started happening. Well, how many generations are we into our refined diets? For many of us, we're multiple generations through. Our grandparents grew up in the canned food era, during World War II and things like that. In 1977, high fructose corn syrup became available for mass production. And there's a dramatic increase of chronic disease in the past couple of generations. Weston A. Price's solution was go back to eating real food, whatever you consider real food to be. If you're Inuit Eskimo, go eat that type of real food. If you're a Scandinavian somebody, go eat that kind of food. If you're a Polynesian person in Hawaii, then eat that kind of food. And he didn't really specify what he thought. He said, go back to your roots, eat real food, eat it as raw as possible, and make it a good time. Weston A. Price has a foundation. They've got all kinds of great information for recipes for like creating your own baby formulas or how to cook with different broths or stews or things like that. Or if you're into grains and they don't jack you up, how to do grains and things like that. But not everybody can get to that point at this day and age because it's a little bit harder for some people. Or their symptomatology is so far gone that they have to take a little bit more drastic steps. So some people thrive on a grain-free diet. That's typically what I recommend people do when they come into our office. They come in with back pain, guess what? You learned yourself a gluten-free diet for the next 30 days so we can see what happens. Come in with cancer, gluten-free diet for the next 30 days, or grain-free diet. And we just go through this process. Yeah, how's it going, Amy? Come on in, make yourself at home. This is Amy, everybody, give her a hand. All right, so if you earn yourself a grain-free diet for a lot of different things, because grains tend to be pretty inflammatory. But a lot of people, maybe not the ones that come to our office immediately that are referred in, but if people come in off the streets and they're like, why do you want me to go on a grain-free diet? I'm here because my back hurts and I get numbness and tingling in my legs. And the reason I like to explain to people is because certain foods create inflammation. Some foods create more inflammation than others, and statistically speaking, grains are at the top of the list. Now it's true, not everybody is gluten sensitive, and not everybody has to be 100% grain-free 100% of the time. But statistically speaking, the people that come to a doctor's office because they're sick and inflamed and jacked up do better when we put them on a grain-free system. So we start there usually, and that's where most people generally would start if they're just looking for overall health and change. Not gospel, it's not written in stone or anything, but it's a good starting point. There tend to be other common inflammatory foods that would include like dairy, things that come from a mammal's milk. So it doesn't necessarily have to be cow's milk. Some people are active goat's milk or camel's milk or cat milk or whatever milk they get exposed to. That was a joke. You look kind of shocked when I say cat milk. Although if you were wondering, if you wanted the closest approximation to human milk and you could not get it, camel's milk would be where you would go. You can import it from the Amish for about $14 a liter up in Pennsylvania. They'll ship it out all over the country. So if you had someone who was needing to be breastfed, they couldn't, and they didn't react well to the homemade formulas you were doing, and you wanted milk for one reason or another, camel milk is your best bet, followed by horse, followed by goat. Goat's usually more available, so people tend to go that route, but not everybody can tolerate it. So when you're looking at inflammatory foods, grains seem to be at the top of the list. Some people dairy, some people nightshades, so the tomatoes, the green peppers, bell peppers, eggplants, potatoes, things like that. Some people just react poorly to meat in general, like red meat. I've got a patient, we'll go and talk about her in a minute, but a patient that 100%, if she eats red meat, she gets jacked up. She feels miserable, and as long as she's not eating red meat, I'm something. So she stays on about a 95% vegetarian diet and eats fish and chicken sporadically, and it's here every 2 or 3 months, and she's great. That person, though, when she came to see me, was 150 pounds overweight. She had chronic pains, fibromyalgia, had stopped going to church because every time someone would come up and say, hey, how's it going? Just the touching her, giving her a hug would make her have pain and not want to go to church. She started isolating herself from her grandkids because they would want to come in and get on grandma's lap and read stories and things like that. And she comes in our office and we'll put her on a 100% vegetarian diet because she was that jacked up. So just fruits and vegetables, nothing else for 30 days, and then we'll start adding things back in to try and see what you can tolerate. One of those 30 days, she started losing weight and her pain went down. She said, I don't want to add anything in yet. Like, nah, I really like it if you could eat some meat, eat some good whole foods. Let's add some more back in there. So she started adding them in, and her symptoms started coming back. So we said, well, okay, that's weird. We'll take out those meats, we'll keep you on the vegetables and fruits only for a little bit longer and go from there. Fast forward 9 months later, she's lost 120 pounds. She's no longer pain-ridden or anything like that. She's back to church. She comes in one day and she says, hey, I took my grandkids roller skating for the first time since I've had grandkids, which is great for her because she used to professionally compete in roller skating back in the 60s and 70s. So like ice skating, but on four-wheel roller skates. And that's what she did. She'd always had shown her grandkids the pictures and the awards and stuff, but she couldn't until, in her particular situation, she went mostly vegetarian. So for her, that was her thriving lifestyle and diet. No rhyme or reason why as to necessarily her ancestry, because she's a third generation or so Texan, but for her, vegetarianism works really well, for the most part. She still eats meat every once in a while, and I encourage her at least once a month, go eat a steak and just be happy. And then she does it, and she feels miserable. Yeah, it's fun, come on in. And then she goes back to eating her vegetables and being fun. Other patients, complete opposites. Like this person right here. This person's a neat story. I'm going to pass these around so you can see what some of their blood work looks like. This guy right here wakes up one day and he's having chest pains and he's overweight. And he's like, I should probably go get this checked out. You'll notice the date is back in November 13th of 2000. The reason this is important is not because I was his doctor, but because he's my father. So in 2000, he went to the hospital because he was having chest pains, and his doctor said, we're going to run some blood work and see what's going on. His blood work comes back with his triglycerides being about 477, that's high. Normal is going to be 200 when you see it over on the side. His total cholesterol was 256, which is also high. I messed up and said triglycerides normal 200. That's what it says on this paper. Now it's about 150 or less. But cholesterol high, HDL was low, and LDL couldn't be read because his numbers were so jacked up. Goes to the doctor, gets his blood work back, and he starts talking to my brother-in-law at the time, because he also does a lot of this stuff that I do. And my brother-in-law says, you need to go see this guy in Las Vegas that is awesome, and go check him out. Dad flies to Las Vegas with this blood work in hand. Guy from Las Vegas says, congratulations, you've earned yourself a meat and vegetables only diet. Take out all grains, eat more meat than you think you should, and eat only vegetables. And my dad's response was, why in the world would I do that if my cholesterol is this high, my triglycerides are this high, and my doctor says I'm going to die of a heart attack tomorrow if I don't fix something? The guy says, just do it for 30 days, we'll see what happens. Fast forward to 12/9/2000. His total cholesterol is now 165. His triglycerides are 159. His HDL cholesterol is still pretty low. And then his LDL cholesterol, 104. His cholesterol to HDL ratio dropped 3 points. And that's in less than 30 days for this particular person. He didn't go vegetarian. He didn't only face yeast and drink water out of a straw or whatever weird thing he would have to do. He ate meat and vegetables, and that was it. He was on a specific no carbohydrate diet, no fruits, no grains, nothing but water, as many vegetables and as many steaks as you want. We'll redo the blood work in 30 days to see if this is in the right track. That was his system, and it worked well for him. So I'll pass those around for you guys so you can check them out and see what it's like. So if that's the case, and we're not sure necessarily how we should go, vegetarian or non-vegetarian, meat and veggies only, how do we decide for ourselves? That's a tough question for some people. There's a very easy way to do it, and that is trial and error. Give up something, see if you start feeling better, add it back in 30 days later or so, and see if you get any better because of it. There are some things you can do at home to try and experiment with it though. So I brought some stuff to test out with you guys. I do not condone the use of these, but they're fun things to do. Heart rate variability is a great way to do it, for those of you that track it and are interested, because it will give you basic autonomic response activity of your body, and you can track it, look for patterns, and then change something and see if the patterns change also. Take some of these and start passing them around, but don't eat them yet. Don't ever eat them, actually. But there was a doctor back in a while ago. His name was Dr. Coca, and he developed something that he wrote in his papers about called the Coca Pulse Test. Now, the results tonight may not be 100% definitive, but it follows along the concept of track something that you have no control over, or little control over a period of time, like heart rate variability or something. And we're going to use pulse. If you don't know how to find it, raise your hand, I'll find it for you, and then you can put your fingers where I put them. You can do it on your hand, or you can do it on your neck like this. If you're doing it in your wrist, it's going to be thumb side, right here. You don't ever want to use your thumb because that will give you false readings. You want to use your first 2 fingers and feel a pulse. What Dr. Coca said is, if you develop a pattern of your pulse, and he had people track it like 15 times a day. You know, every morning, right when you wake up, you track your pulse. Then after you eat, you track your pulse. Then an hour later, you track your pulse. And just over and over, you track your pulse, and you get your baseline of what you are. He then says you can stick something in your mouth and watch your pulse start to change. And if there's a deviation of more than 8 points or so, that thing is probably not something good for you. So we're going to experiment with it. So everybody track your pulse. We're going to do it for about a minute. Then we'll stick stuff in our mouth, unless dollar store peppermints kill you. Like create a real reaction, don't do it, because that would not be good. And then we're going to track and see if our pulse changes. So, track your pulse for, I don't know, I got to find a cloth. You got it, 7 minutes? All right, so she's going to give us 1 minute's worth. We're going to do a solid minute tracking our pulse. All right, everybody got their number? Can everybody remember their number for at least 2 minutes? All right, open up the peppermint, throw it in your mouth. We're going to give you a couple of seconds to just suck it on it and taste it, creating a neurologic reflex. Your taste is going to happen. That taste is going to go up through your brain, and it's going to start changing things, potentially. Now, this isn't a foolproof system because we don't know 100% what our normal pulse is always like. Mine, for example, is really high right now. I'm like 72, and I'm normally around 60. But I'm up here dancing and singing and trying to be entertaining for you guys. So it's a little bit higher than normal for me at this time. So you'll track your pulse in just a second after you get a good salivary response. When you can taste it, your brain starts working and either saying, this is a great thing for me, this, or probably not a good idea. Kind of like the guy that eats peanuts, right, and shouldn't. He eats peanuts and touches his lips, immediately he starts having a reaction and he dies, unless he gets the peanut out of his mouth with some other type of intervention. So we're trying to do this concept to see if we're getting a response. Dr. Coca would say a response greater than about 8 points or so would probably indicate a not appropriate food for someone to eat. Everybody got it? Good taste? 1 minute on the clock.
Ready, go.
All right. How many people saw a response of change in pulse greater than 8 points? Raise your hand.
Almost.
Almost?
Almost.
So it's like 7s?
It was
6, 7? And you guys saw it higher than 8?
8.
Okay. Okay, trash can. So anybody who wants to?
Yeah.
If you want to, you can spit it out. If you don't want to, go right ahead. We'll just pass it around. That's fine. So that's one way you can experiment with stuff at home. Because watch what happens. If you know your pulse, how many of you can change your pulse on a whim? It's kind of tough. Some people can do it. But it takes a state of Zen happiness to be able to start changing things like this. So therefore, if it's something you can't necessarily change, and you know a good baseline for you, you could experiment with seeing how things potentially work for you. Not 100% foolproof in this example. Even in his writings, Dr. Coca said it works for a lot of people, but not everyone. And there are many reasons why. Some people are so jacked up neurologically, they can't even initiate a response that says, guess what, you're dying. Don't put that in your mouth. So if that's the case, you could be sitting here like, oh yeah, this Diet Coke's obviously really good for me because my pulse did the exact same. You know, it's not. I'm not gonna, sorry to let the cat out of the bag, but it's not better or good for you, even if your pulse doesn't change. But there are ideas or ways that you can experiment with certain foods. I have patients do this when they're weird off-the-wall foods. Like, you know what, doc, I think I react to like bananas. Well, maybe if you don't eat bananas every single day, you can establish a pulse, eat a banana, and see what happens. And if your banana causes that type of reaction, that might be something you may not want to put into your body anymore. Some people have reverse reactions. They put something in their mouth, instead of their pulse going up, it goes down. How many of you had that reaction? Anybody? A couple of us? Okay, sometimes that means there are other physiologic things going on as well. It usually means your body's stressed out as it is, and its only response is to not rev up and get you out of the way of the bear that's coming to eat you, but to just say, just, you're done for, just go for it. No, I'm not saying you're done for, but we have these involuntary responses in our body, okay? It's called your, fight or flight system, or your non-fight or flight system. Your fight or flight is your sympathetic mode. If you put something into your body or you do something that causes an increase in activity, sometimes it's a good thing, like physical activity. Sometimes it may not be a good thing, like eating peppermints from the dollar store. Okay? If we can't generate a neurologic response that says, get out of the way of harm, then sometimes our body says, we've got some other stuff we need to deal with first. So let's tone it back, let's rest a little bit, let's let our body heal and repair before we start doing either physical activity or experimentation with foods. And that's where heart rate variability testing shows a good trend if you're doing it, every day at a certain time, taking as many factors out as possible. Or doing pulse testing every day is trying to take out these extra factors, because they can give baseline ideas that says, you know what, I woke up, my heart rate variability is way off today, I probably shouldn't go exercise or go binge drinking tonight or whatever we're going to do. Okay? Because if we do those, our body's already in a compromised state, it's just adding more stress and bringing us down, making it harder. It's the hardest thing to do for some people, especially the athletes of the world, when I tell them, wake up and today you get to just walk. Don't get your heart rate above 140. And they freak out, like, what do you mean I can't go sprint and run marathons and do CrossFit and everything? It's like, no, because you're jacked up today, don't do it. But rest, take it a day's rest, and then tomorrow if you're okay and you're physiologically capable of it, then go do your activities. Otherwise you're making more harm than good, and we don't want to do that. So that's one way you can mess around with at home and see what works for you and what doesn't. When it comes to other ways of testing foods, there are a lot of medical type tests that can be done. And all of them have their caveats and they aren't necessarily awesome. Some of them are really good, but nothing is foolproof from a medical standpoint of testing foods. The gold standard for knowing what food you should be eating or should not be eating is an elimination diet. If you're not sure about something, you take it out of your life for, I like to say 30 days, and then you put it back in and you look for symptomatic change. But there are certain types of foods that will do it. How many of you have ever heard of celiac disease? All of us. What does that have to relate with? Gluten, right? So gluten is a portion of the wheat molecule, or wheat, rye, oats, stuff like that molecule. And it's in a grain, and as your body starts trying to eat it up, it spits out a gliadin molecule, and people react to that sometimes. It creates an immune response within the body. The thing is, gluten or gliadin or wheat derivatives can cause all kinds of reactions. I'm in the middle of writing, we'll call it a book. And in the back of that book, there's an appendix that has peer-reviewed medical research that lists a whole bunch of conditions that have been tied with wheat and wheat-derived things. My current number is 249. 249 diagnosable conditions that are aggravated by, or affected by, or caused by wheat and wheat-derived things. It'll be a neat list someday whenever I finish doing whatever I'm doing, but it's a big list so far, and I was shocked when I got that far into it, and I know there are more. Things from Down syndrome, people getting worse when they eat gluten, to people that have neck pain and unexplained headaches, to infertility, to hair loss, to whatever. You can probably throw a dart at any medical word in a dictionary and associate that with gluten. I'm pretty sure if the research has been done, it'll be there. If they haven't done it, you run a research paper with it, I'm pretty sure you'll find some type of association for some people. The problem with celiac disease or gluten is, if you see two dots there, those are the two tests that are tested for people that are suspected celiac disease. Which means, let's pretend one of us goes to the doctor because we can't lose weight, our hair's falling out, we have cold hands and cold feet, we wake up at night because we have hot flashes and menopausal type symptoms, and we think we're having hormonal stuff. Guys, sorry, this may not apply to you. You go to the doctor because you have those symptoms. The doctor says, oh, you've got hormonal stuff. Let's see if your hormones are fine. And your hormones come back perfectly normal. And you tell the doctor, doctor, I think I have celiac disease, can we test for it? And he runs these two tests, and they're perfectly normal, and he tells you, you do not have celiac disease, eat as much wheat as you want, you're fine. The problem with that is, there's a whole bunch of other derivatives of wheat, and we don't all just react to the ones that are diagnosable as celiac disease. This isn't a perfect test, but it's the one that if people really want to know if wheat bothers them, I like to run on people. It tests 24 or so different ways that wheat could jack someone up, including the two that are diagnosable for celiac. The problem with this, though, is it comes back and says everybody's always sensitive to wheat. It's not really a problem. It's very convincing to me that says we should probably keep grains out of our life. There's about 4 tests that I've ever received that show perfectly clear these people can eat wheat. And I've probably run 100 of them. Yes, ma'am.
I have also done one of these tests.
Right.
And my doctor said that he wanted to have a microscope up and look how the lining of the gut was.
Right.
And he said that it should change in order to have celiac disease.
Right.
And I didn't have any changes. And
right.
It was normal, but I know I can have wheat.
Right. There's a real interesting page, if you want to get it for me real quick, and I'll show you. It's the algorithm for determining celiac disease. Mm-hmm. It's in like one of the drawers under the desk here. It's a blue page from Mayo Clinic, and it has a whole bunch of like lines all over it from them, not me. Celiac disease is the autoimmune condition of gut problem associated with gluten or wheat. Hashimoto's autoimmune thyroiditis, for example, is the thyroid-associated problem that deals with gluten or gliadin associated with thyroid. So people that have autoimmune Hashimoto's thyroiditis that are sensitive to gluten are negative for biopsy of the stomach and all that stuff. It's all normal, but yet they have these reactions when they eat more gluten. Cerebellar ataxia, so people that walk like they're drunk when they eat Subway, which there are people that do that, is an autoimmune condition to the brain, just like celiac disease, but instead of their body eating the gut up and causing those villi or those small intestine things to be eroded away, it just has a picnic on the brain instead, or the thyroid, or these other conditions. So celiac disease is a misnomer of what really happens to how we respond to gluten as a whole, unless it's specific to our gut. So what a lot of people will call it is non-celiac gluten sensitivity. This, by the way, is the celiac diagnosis testing algorithm. And it tells you that if someone comes in with gut problems, you first check to see if they have an immune response. And if they have an immune response, then you can start testing for these 2 guys right here. And if they don't pass those, then you can go here. And eventually it all ends up with you must biopsy it to confirm it. And that's only to say celiac disease. But we can all have reactions to certain foods that make us worse and not be celiac. So I'll pass these around in case you're bored and want to check and just see what they look like. So when it comes to testing, though, that's a test I like to do for screening purposes, but it's not even foolproof. I've had people that come back and are 100% perfect on that test that still get off of wheat and wheat-derived things, and they feel better, even though their body came back and said blood test-wise, from those parameters, it looked okay. That's why for most people, elimination diet's the way to go. They come in, I tell them you should avoid these foods, and I list a couple of foods off for them. And if they say, I'm not so sure, I'm like, okay, let's run a test for it. You want to spend $375? Let's do it. And then they say, okay, sure. We run the test, and they get off of those foods because the blood test tells them to. And then they get better, and life is happy, and rainbows appear, and their husbands are more obedient, and their house stays cleaner, and all these things just start magically happening when they get off of gluten or wheat-derived things. But that's not always the case. I strongly encourage elimination diets. So I would start off with grains, specifically gluten-containing grains first. If you're already doing that and you're not sure what to do next, well then do dairy, because that's like a close second. It's not for everybody, but it's a common trend that shows up. In fact, that same company runs a test. If you look on the back of that, sorry for those of you that already saw it, it runs a gluten-associated and cross-reactivity test panel. And it says, great, maybe you don't react to gluten, or maybe you do. But maybe you're reacting to these other guys as well, which would include your dairies, your soy, your egg, all of your gluten-free grains, chocolate, coffee, all kinds of stuff. Because certain foods, if you're having an immune response to it, will start piggybacking on that immune response and reacting to other foods. So now you get the person that wakes up right things. And for some people, I'll say, look, avoid the top 4 foods. These are the 4 foods that I have most patients avoid starting day 1. That'll be anything that's a grain, specifically gluten-containing grains, anything that comes from a mammal's teat or udder, unless you're a baby. You can have that if you're a baby. Or if you're an adult lactating male person, that'd be interesting. Gluten, wheat-containing grains, and grains in general. Dairy, I'll edit that out for the video people. Number 3 would be corn in all its forms, including popcorn, even though that's non-genetically modified, because genetically modified corn can't pop. And then soy. Those are the top 4 foods almost everybody would benefit from by avoiding. Starting day 1, if you knew nothing about your health life, or if I knew nothing about your health life, and you said, Chase, what's 4 things I can do to get better tomorrow? Maybe get off those 4 foods for 30 days, and then slowly add them in reverse order and see what happens. Unless you're a male, I would discourage you to eat soy. Never eat soy, just don't do it. And then if you're a female under the age of menopause, I would never do soy either. If you're after the age of menopause, some soy is tolerable. Sometimes. Some people react weird.
It's
but
not genetically modified?
yeah, and it should all be non-genetically modified and blessed by Buddhist monks, and just to the best form you can get. Okay. Which means it's hard to find, because there's like 95% of all corn and soy in the United States is genetically modified. But if you go back to your ancestral roots and you're able to find ancestral grains, some people tolerate them really well, and they have some nutritional constituent components to it. And some menopausal women, when they eat soy on occasion, their menopausal symptoms will go away if they can get a hold of the non-genetically modified stuff, because it stimulates an estrogen-like effect in the body. So if I have the person that can't get pregnant and is having breast tenderness when they cycle, and they're having infertility, or hair falling out and their nails are weak and whatever, and they're drinking soy milk every morning, they're just cramming estrogens up through the roof, and they just need to get off of them. So they get off of the soy and they do some other things to clear out the estrogens from their body, and then their symptoms will start appearing. Best herb for that is rosemary, for example. Rosemary is a huge estrogenic maintaining herb in the body. You have breast tenderness next time you're on your cycle, and you or your husband or somebody's jabbing on you, throw some rosemary in your mouth and then see if the tenderness goes away. Weird office trick we do sometimes with people. Like, hey, is this hurt? Yeah. Okay. I open a rosemary thing in their mouth and then I jab on them again. I'm like, man, that's awesome. It gets better. Like, good. You just earn yourself a bottle of rosemary if you're not going to cook with it. So, cook with rosemary all the time. If you're a woman, you have hormonal stuff going on. There are other types of tests you can do there, all kinds of stool samples or genetic tests to see if you're sensitive to gluten or dairy or corn or soy or tomatoes or whatever. But elimination diet's where it's at. Take it out of your life, watch your symptoms get better, and be honest with yourself if it's really out of your life or not. You can't go gluten-free and drink beer every night, because there's an error in that. You're detoxing during the day and retoxing at night. That's the problem. You don't want to do that. So take them out of your life, and then put them back in and watch for symptomatic change. And you'll start noticing certain foods jack you up and others maybe not so bad. Papa John's is my nemesis. I don't like eating it a lot, but occasionally we'll be somewhere, football game's on, the tap water's flowing, and I'll grab a Papa John's pizza. And I'll eat it, and I'll go, oh my gosh, this is great. And then that night, I feel like a menopausal woman. I get night sweats, I get hot flashes, I'm kicking the covers off, I'm pulling them back on me, and I'm doing all this crazy weird stuff, and I'm like, this is what all my patients tell me, this is awesome. And then I get rushing like 3 or 4 times, it's like, this is great, but I know what menopause feels like, and I'm 32 years old, and I'm a guy. So I just don't eat Papa John's pizza. Or if I eat it, I know I'm going to suffer tremendously for it. And so I make those conscious decisions to not do it. So, if you want to experience menopause, guys, it may work for you too. All right, cool. So, any questions so far about like what you can do or how you can test for it, or food specifically? Any questions so far? Yes, ma'am.
What's your opinion on rice?
On rice?
Yes.
If you're not insulin resistant and you can tolerate it, it doesn't create reactions, let's say use it sparingly. It's definitely going to have carbohydrate aspects and change blood sugar within the body.
Mm-hmm.
What I like to have patients do for the first 30 days, I do a lot of stuff in my first visit. You avoid gluten, dairy, corn, and soy, right? Those are like my first 4 foods. And I'll tell them, if you snort crack on the weekends, I technically don't care right now. Do whatever else you want to do. But those 4 foods we're going to start with, because as we get rid of those and we start decreasing your inflammation, the crack addiction will go away and the other stuff will start falling into place. So those 4 foods we start with. From a macronutrient standpoint, you have carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. I generally like to see people around 20%, 60%, 20% in the first 30 days. Not because it's a perfect number for every person, but it starts throwing people in the direction of lowering their carbohydrate intake anyways. And a lot of people come back and tell me that within the next couple of days they'll get a text message or an email that says, hey, when I eat rice, it blows me out of proportion. I'm like, yeah, well, you're inflamed right now, let's stop on the rice for right now. But later down the road, we can start tweaking these numbers. It's a general rule I like to throw people into. And I have everybody download the MyFitnessPal app and track their foods that they eat and send me text messages at night. And it just shoots me a little pie chart that says what they were that day. And I'll give them thumbs up or like a hear no evil, speak no evil, monkey faces or whatever if they're really bad. You know, we just kind of hold each other accountable. And the reason I would say that is because if you ran a business, you would do something called a profit loss statement. And you would want to know if you were making money or losing money. Because if 6 months down the road you're hemorrhaging money every single week and you keep doing it, that's a problem. Well, what if dietarily speaking, you're hemorrhaging inflammation and you're jacking yourself up with every spoonful of whatever you're putting inside of you, and you don't know it because you think you're eating a healthy diet, whether it's meats and veggies only, or meat and dairy and whatever, or whatever it might be. Do a profit loss statement of what you're actually eating, see what you're putting into your body and hold yourself accountable, and then watch your symptoms either get better or get worse or stay the same. This generally is what I'll do with the MyFitnessPal app and hold them accountable. And then over the first 30 days, they're doing everything on their own. I'll sometimes support them with certain supplementation or herbs. Like I said, with the rosemary, if they're not doing it on their own and they're willing to do it, they get rosemary bottle. If they're not willing to eat cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and kale and Brussels sprouts and things like that, with their effects on the liver, and they're not willing to do it, great, I got it in a pill. I'll just start pilling you up if you're not going to eat it right. But I prefer people to do it with real food and get where they need to be from there. Okay? Did that answer your question regarding rice, or was that a big waffling aspect of not answering your question?
No, it was what I do. I don't eat very often, but I didn't know, just because it is considered a grain. Right. I don't typically eat grains. That's the only one exclusion.
Okay. And some people can do it and some people can't. And that's ultimately, each person is individual in this room. I'd say about 3 years ago, I was real heavily putting people on the blood typing diet. If you came in and you're an O blood, guess what? You earn yourself steak and veggies every night. If you're an A blood type, you got fish on occasion and chicken and a whole bunch of veggies. If you were B blood type, you get, and I was doing this whole system. And it worked great for about 75 to 80% of the people. But I think what I was really doing is putting them on real food and taking out the garbage, because I was already taking stuff out of their life and throwing them into eating real food. And now, like that lady I was telling you about, this mostly vegetarian that lost all that weight, she's an O blood. She contradicts everything that an O blooded person should be, because she's basically vegetarian. And then I have other people that are A blood, people that thrive on steaks. So it's not a perfect science, but that's where I was 3 years ago. That kind of got me moving in the direction of putting people on certain food programs, and basically boiled it down to get off of these 4 foods first, and if necessary, I'll pull from that list occasionally, and we'll go from there. Or we'll blood test somebody and see what happens. Cool. Any other questions? Yes.
I was just in your book right there, as far as ancestors, would you just look back where your grandparents and whatever came from, say like Germany and England?
That was my original thought process behind it, of the blood typing system, because some of them say that.
I mean, which is that what you would look for in that?
Well, that's kind of, but not really. I think we're too mixed up as a people now. We're too many generations into our jacked up habits.
Yeah.
That most of us need to cut inflammation across the board. We can't really look back and say,
so would
hey,
you really use that book as a resource?
Not really.
Okay.
I would not. Originally, when I started doing the blood typing thing, it was because of this book, because it said, oh, most Eskimos are like O blood type. Maybe that has something to do with it. They all like a certain one. Most Hawaiians are B blood type. Let's go down that pathway. And I tried mixing the two concepts together with this, and it got me to a point, but it didn't work across the board. Now I think our best bet is to just stop the most common inflammatory foods, eat real food. Because once you do this, if you get gluten, dairy, corn, and soy out of your life, basically anything packaged goes out. Once you get rid of packaged stuff, you're back to real food. And then you go to the real food that works best for you. Real food that's fruits and vegetables, a lot of it, or real food that's mostly meat, or some happy combination in between. Because real food will get you where you need to be. It allows for your body to naturally take the vitamins and minerals and collagen and whatever else is in these foods to replenish and repair and make things happen. And then when you all walk in, you'll saw a bunch of my stuff over here. When the real food isn't doing enough, we throw supplements at it to augment and support what's going on. That would be something over there looking for. Oh, you look like you were not enough. So real food would augment what's supposed to be in your diet. And if you're not willing to eat the real diet, well, then we get more augmentation. If you're eating a whole lot of real good diet, well, then you get less augmentation. And there's different varieties or variations of supplementation that I would use for people. Whole food based things is what I typically want. I don't like doing the high dense synthetic isolated nutrients, for example. Like I would never give someone like a 5,000 milligram vitamin C tablet. That's because you don't ever find 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C on a tree growing in nature. You go eat an apple, you'll get about 17 milligrams of vitamin C, ascorbic acid, but you'll get a whole lot of other stuff like the tyrosinase that's going to repair and build up your collagen, your vitamin C stores within you. You're going to get a whole bunch of the root and the P factors to stop capillary fragility, so you're not hemorrhaging or bleeding when you brush your teeth and things like that. But you get that from food, you don't get that in high dose ascorbic acid. So most of whenever I'm supplementing somebody, it's going to be food in powdered forms to try and get more of something into you that you're not getting in your normal everyday life, or herbs. And that's how I'll drive mechanisms among people. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Well, the thing about those four foods is those are the ones that are genetically modified. Well, the gluten isn't. It's not genetically modified. It's hybridized from like 40 years ago.
Right.
But the corn and the soy are all genetically modified. So if it's not genetically modified, of which does it have the same effect?
It's an interesting question because some people can do these foods and be perfectly fine. I find the people that tolerate them the best are doing them in their most natural state. So they go to like Garmin Farms and get the raw dairy or the raw cheeses, and they are fine with it. I do a lot of something called applied kinesiology in my office. I muscle test a lot of stuff, and I'll show you all what it's going to do in a second when I try poisoning you or fixing you with the demonstration. But I went and got a bunch of cheese from Garmin Farms, and I just started testing people on it in the office. I cut up little pieces, throw it in their mouth, and just jab on their belly, see if something hurt, look for foot reflexes, I'd muscle test stuff. And raw, organic, grass-fed cows create all kinds of great stuff for people. The thing is, most people aren't like that whenever they walk in. People don't walk in eating raw, organic, grass-fed everything when they come to see me. They're eating conventional stuff, and it's messing them up. So the first step is lower the inflammation, get their body in a position where they can tolerate certain things, and then we start fiddling around from there. And the example I would use would be, exercise is great unless you have a broken leg, you don't go jogging. So we can go run, we can do athletic events or activities, but if your leg is broken, that's your rest stage until the leg's no longer broken and you're sustainable to go out and do those. Well, for most people when they come see me, their inflammation is so high, they can't do any of this to begin with.
Right.
Or we have to get through some layers first, and then we can say, guess what? You want milk and you're just obsessed with cheese and all these things? Go get a good grass-fed, free-range Zen cow, and let's eat the milk from there and see what happens to you. Because you've been off of it for 30 days, put this good stuff back in your life, and if your symptoms start returning, I'm sorry, dairy's not for you. You need to be on a dairy-free system, possibly indefinitely. But if you can do this and those foods are not bothering you, then great. You just earned a new great fat into your life that has a bunch of good things in it because of the way that those cows were made, or bred, or harvested. Does that make sense?
In other words, there is possibly hope to get these foods back after you.
There are. In fact, this person right here, yeah, their names are marked out. This person was interesting. He came in basically as leukemia. And he came in and red blood cells are in the tank. You know, he's just not producing oxygen to his cells. He's because of leukemia. Stuff is falling out. His energy is down. He can't lose weight, or he can't gain weight, and his body was shutting down. We ran some food tests on him because he said he walked in and checkbook in hand said, "Run everything you possibly want to ever see on me because we're doing it right now. I don't care what it costs." I said, "Well, I'd like to see this." We ran all kinds of fun stuff on it. It was great. And as we did this, he went off of all these foods, started getting better. We started building stuff back up. He starts eating all these foods again, and his numbers kept going. Well, his biggest deal wasn't a gluten and dairy thing. This guy, like he had broken his legs, he just needed to rest for a little bit. And then he added back in, and his blood markers stayed where they needed to be. His oncologist said, "Great, things are looking awesome. Just keep going." We were able to add these two foods back in. It was like gluten and dairy, or grains and dairy. And he has to do them very sparingly. And he has to do the whole ancestral realm of things. But he was into it. He liked to grind his own wheat and make his own bread, and this is what he liked to do. So he did it, and he did okay with it. Even though a lot of those foods that he was reacting to, which were the glutens, and then on the backside, some other grains, we took him off of all of them. Did it for about 6 months, added them all back in, and then his symptoms were all better. His regular blood tests, like his hemoglobins and things like that, were back to normal. Yes, ma'am.
Was that the only thing you did, or did you also go on probiotics and stuff like that?
I probably had him on about 14 supplements at the same time. When people come in that are jacked up, they get a more jacked up program than other people that may not be. So we did a lot of food elimination stuff. He had to do a lot of fermented foods also. And then we started supplementing him a lot with some of our whole food based things. And then as the 6 months went through, his supplement load started coming down because his other numbers were coming up from his standard blood test. Any other questions for me? Yes, ma'am.
What is your opinion regarding beans? Consuming beans?
Beans are an interesting subject. If you have an autoimmune situation, beans tend to be more inflammatory than non-autoimmune related people. They also tend to have some decent carbs inside of them, and they'll throw our numbers out of whack. But in the first 30 days, I usually don't address them. Not because they're evil or awesome, but because I'm trying not to overwhelm people already when they're coming in and they're already... When I tell this to people, it's deer in the headlights. They don't know what they're going to eat. Because we'll go through a 24-hour dietary, like, what'd you eat this morning? Cereal and toast and orange juice. Okay, what'd you eat last night? It's spaghetti, and they list nothing but these foods.
Right.
So this is culture shock enough. If necessary, we start eliminating even more. Beans, soak them, do a bunch of different things. You can mess with them. I don't have a strong opinion either way, unless you're jacked up enough to where your body says you have to get off of them. Does that make sense?
It does, because I had type 2 diabetes when I was a teenager, and then I lost weight, so now my levels are pretty normalized.
Right.
But I don't know if you have specific recommendations for someone who has been diabetic in the past.
I'd say it depends on a couple of markers for me. Your hemoglobin A1C, which is generally the diabetes marker that someone wants to track to know if you're diabetic or not. Generally, the accepted value is 6.3 or higher. Homocysteine, usually they say is about 15 or higher. You have a problem. Based off of those two numbers, I would potentially tell you to get off of grains. You want to know the secret? 5.7 or less, 5.7-ish. I like them about the same. The reason is homocysteine is an inflammatory marker for cardiovascular stuff and liver pathways within the body. So if that is throwing out numbers higher than what I want it to be, it probably tells me you're not reacting to certain carbohydrates or things as well as you could. You're just storing inflammation here. So let's knock all the inflammation out of the body. And if your body can tolerate it, great, eat beans, no big deal. If you can't, well then maybe we need to get off them. Your hemoglobin A1C, once it goes above 5.7, you start creating a bunch of neurologic inflammation. Far surpassing the blood sugar being up just because blood sugar's up and pancreas is not working, you start creating neurodegeneration at 5.7 and higher. And because your brain's going to control a lot of stuff within the body, I'd prefer it to be as low as possible from a hemoglobin A1C and a homocysteine standpoint. Inflammation, blood sugar handling is taken care of, usually in those two numbers. Yes, sir.
Do you ever test postprandial blood numbers? Because I've heard like A1C is the last number to fall for somebody,
right?
Even if they're pretty metabolically stressed.
I usually don't, and that's because I'm usually working 6-9 months at a time with people, and I give people enough time to get these numbers to move. So the physiologic standpoint of change is usually a 90-day cycle for this to start seeing it move in the right direction. And I'm going to be working with someone for lifestyle change, not 30 days at a time. I'm saying, oh, just get off of these, and after 30 days you're fine, because those insulin numbers can start changing postprandial sooner than that. So I like to just say, go longer term with it. Let's get this number into play first.
But what if somebody's, I guess what I'm leading to is, what if somebody's metabolically damaged, but their A1C is normal? But it would show something abnormal postprandial if you tested postprandial.
Right. I see what you mean. It's just not something I've really done that much of. Usually we're just seeing symptoms and stuff as a whole, and I put myself in a hole because I told you 2 tests that I would like to see. In reality, I never do anything off of just 2 things. I really am looking at a bigger picture all the time with people, so it gives me a better idea, and I would hopefully catch that. I've never kind of had to at this point yet. Let's put it that way. But from just benchmark goals, these would be what I like to see of those, even though we're going to be looking at more of the picture ideally, because I would never just run these 2 numbers. When I run blood tests, it's like 4 or 5 pages worth of regular testing. Any other questions?
I guess where do you stand?
Sure.
Where do you stand on seed oils?
Seed oils? I don't. Butter, olive oil, grapeseed oil, maybe, and then coconut oil. They're about as extravagant as I get. So, and grapeseed oil is a rare one for me either, also. It's mostly just butter is what I tell people. Real butter. Like grass-fed, legit butter. Which is weird because that's what people get off of dairy, right? So the next question is, why can I do butter? Butter, when we say dairy, we're really wanting you to avoid casein molecule, which is similar to gluten in its molecular structure. Butter has a very low content of that. Ghee has none of it. But butter, for the most part, if it's from good, healthy cows from Ireland in silver and gold bars that look like this, I like them. Usually, that's the kind I get the most, just because it's available at Sprouts and HEB and where we go. And sorry,
Costco.
And it's available at Costco, I guess.
Does heavy cream count then as well? There's not much casein.
Yeah, you can do cream a lot of times also. Now some people that mix up their own ice cream, which is like straight cream and cream. And then they add more cream to it and they freeze it for a while. And then they just eat that. And that's how they do their own ice cream, because they want to avoid the sugars and avoid all this other stuff, and it's just like 90% fat. Cool. You got a question, sir?
How does fecal transplant help?
I'm sorry?
How does fecal transplant help people's microbiome?
That's a phenomenal question.
I was just wondering because I
Have anyone ever heard of a fecal transplant?
But no one really talks about it.
You taught it?
We show it to the students because there's a clip on the news about it from the medical center.
Yeah, fecal transplants are awesome. Whoever signs up to be a donor for that gets paid, has got the job. But basically, fecal transplants, you take healthy, good feces, you spin them down, and you reinsert into people that don't have healthy feces. Sounds gross and disgusting, I know. But it's huge for restoring butt problems that are messed up. On a side note, people that have neurologic disorders also thrive really well from fecal transplants. People with Parkinson's, they reinsert this stuff into them and quickly see changes in tremors and in gait patterns and stuff like that. Because your gut has a huge input and influence on how your nervous system will function. So they're cool. I don't actually know anybody that does them. I don't even know if you can do them in Texas or anything like that. But if you want to try it, let us know how it goes next time. But
no one ever talks about it. They say, yeah, people transplant this and that. But
yeah, I don't know enough about them other than what I've read that says some neurologic people were jacked up. They had fecal transplants. They got miraculously better. And it's really cool. Some Australian studies and things like that demonstrate.
Well, they do it in the US.
Okay. I don't know enough about them other than what I've read that says if you're jacked up, you should do it. So they restore a bunch of good probiotics and microbiota, like you said, and that'll affect brain function. They'll start improving. Any other questions? How are we on time? I don't even know how long I've been standing here. 7:30? So we're at an hour. I didn't even do any demonstrations outside of the pulse thing. Do y'all want to see more fun stuff or not? This is like stuff that I do though, so I don't want it to feel like y'all are forced to be here. But it's neat to see how your body will respond to certain influences and things if we have a guinea pig that doesn't mind being on video for everyone. And if you want to leave, you're more than welcome to do so. So if someone, first person gets up here can do it.
Can you fix my gum infection?
I'm actually not doing any chiropractic or crazy weird neurology stuff. I just want to show some effects of what food and things like that have on people. So whoever wants to, come on up. Alright, alright.
Shoes on a rock.
Let's have you lay on your back. It doesn't matter for shoes. It's not my table.
It's not your table.
Spin your head around for me. Head that way.
That's what I'm making.
Just like that. No, that's good. Go and lay on your back for me. Alright, so there are a couple of things we can see physiologically that happens with people in their normal, natural state. So generally when people come into the office, I'll do some tests with them. I'll jab on their belly, and I'll ask if things hurt. So, like, does this hurt?
It's a little tender.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, what would you call this? About right there. That seems where you flinch the most.
Probably
6 out of 10 when we jab on our belly. I'm pushing about this hard. Okay? On this side over here, no pain. If I jab under your ribs like this,
Not pleasant, but doesn't hurt.
on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say?
4?
Okay? Then I go on this side.
About the same.
Also a 4? Alright. So, spot number 1, 6 out of 10. Spot number 2, 0 out of 10. Then 3 and 4 were both 4 out of 10s. Now, how many of you have ever heard of a somatovisceral reflex? If you have a heart attack, where do you feel it? Sorry, a viscerosomatic reflex. So you get a heart attack, you feel it somewhere on the body. Okay. Heart attack, chest caves in, arm starts to hurt, numbing. That's a viscerosomatic reflex. Organ is jacked up, affecting viscera. Viscera is affecting somatic tissue to let you know there's a problem. We have spots on the body that can demonstrate potential areas of inflammation. So when I jab on her over here, over the pancreas area, and it's a 6 out of 10, there's potential that blood sugar handling may not be as good as we want it to be. If I come over here and jab on the ribs where the stomach would reflex something, there's a potential that her hydrochloric acid or stomach digestion is probably working as good or better than we would think. If I jab under here and try and irritate her spleen, and she says, ouch, 4 out of 10, maybe there's something going on over there. This over here is under the liver gallbladder, possibly something going on there. Now, am I diagnosing her? No, I'm just demonstrating, seeing what might be going on. And we compare physical exam with lab tests, with history, with whatever, we figure out what's going on. But for demonstration purposes, we can poke on the body and see what shows up. From a structural standpoint, you have certain muscles that come from the back down into the hips and affect internal rotation of the leg. So we'll just see what happens. Let's take these off so nobody cheats. We do this. They look up. No, you just relax for me.
Okay.
About normal, about equal, right? More or less equal with both of them when we're putting pressure on. So that appears to be looking okay. Let's do a couple of quick muscle tests. This med leg toward your chin. That appears to be strong. Go and relax. That toward your chin. That appears to be strong. This leg straight. Press up to the sky. Good. This leg straight. Good. All right. So we've got 4 spots on the belly that appear to create pain in this weakness. All of her muscles appear to be strong, and her body appears to be symmetrical in movement when we do that, more or less. We're going to poison you with something and see how your body reacts. We'll do this one first. Open really wide. Similar to what we did with the Coca test, I'm looking for change. If we put about that much of something in her mouth. Can you taste it?
Yeah.
Tastes awesome?
No.
Okay, sorry. If I jab on your belly here, same, better, or worse?
It's better.
Weird. Okay, so it's a little bit better. Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst.
Well, it's that one spot is probably about the same.
Okay, and this side?
Yeah, I think it's worse.
Worse over there. If I jab under here. I'm sorry, your knees were back before.
I think it's worse.
Worse. And here?
It's definitely worse.
A lot worse there. Over here, just relax. That's still about the same. So that didn't really change anything. For knee to your chest, that didn't really change anything. And here, hold. That doesn't change anything. Push up. That's okay. Push up. All right. We put that much of something in her mouth, and this up here creates a response from the way she described it. Out here, we didn't really see any differences, but what we put in her mouth was 100% organic wheat flour. That was it. But we started seeing that when I jabbed on her liver area, dramatic increase in pain. This section of the ribs basically about the same. This section over here a little bit worse. Under the ribs over here, basically about the same. We can use something like that to figure out what she may need to be doing, in addition to her own evaluation of pulse or symptomatic survey or whatever. So on the first visit, when I see people, I start jabbing on them and get a baseline of what's working, what's not. And then I start throwing a bunch of stuff on their body, on their tongue, creating a neurologic reflex, saying, all right, guess what? You earned yourself a gluten-free diet, you earned yourself a dairy-free diet, you're getting gluten and dairy-free, or whatever we might go with it. Okay? Thank you very much for being a guinea pig.
All right.
We're going to be off the table. Congratulations, give her a hand. Yeah, we'll try. Come on, don't mess around. This is fun. I'm Chase.
I'm Matt.
Nice to meet you, Matt.
Nice to meet you.
On your back. You won't go into anaphylactic shock if I put something in your mouth.
Hopefully not.
I should have asked that for you, but I guess it's my second time to meet you. I probably assumed you would do that. All right, so we're going to see a similar thing. We're just going to run through them all again. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst? 1. Oops. This one? 0. Will you go hit that real quick? That's me reminding myself to email somebody about blood test. What was it?
Maybe a
little bit. So like 1 still, or
yeah,
1?
Maybe like 2.
All right, so maybe a 1, maybe a 1, maybe a 1, 2. Really not that big of a deal for you, which is good. We'd expect that from a young man that looks like he could bench press a car. Hold that there. You do your chest. Good strong test there. We're gonna do a different test for you. Hold that right there and I'll move it. All right, that one worked okay. And this one here, knee to your chest. Good. And then hold that right there, don't move it. All right. Appears to be working okay. Can you take your shoes off real quick? Nice socks. Relax. Relax for me. So he doesn't get as much rotation as you did, but they're more or less about the same. So we have a baseline. Minimal pain here, 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 a little bit more pain here, and muscle basically strong, leg rotation basically working like it should. How do you eat 100% of the time? Most of the time, let's say. Are you mostly
pretty high fat, really high fat, and
okay.
like grass-fed beef.
Do you do dairy at all?
I do butter and heavy whipping cream.
Okay, conventional-ish stuff? Or
all grass-fed.
All grass-fed. Open the line. Oh, that was a bigger chunk than I thought it was going to be. Sorry about that. You okay? Sorry about that. Bend your knees for me. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, did that change anything? No problem at all there. Good. No. In here. Not really. In here. No problem. Good. And hold. Just relax here for me. And hold. Those didn't really change. Knee to your chest. Bring your knee here. Good. Hold that there. Let me spin it. Good. And here. Oh, there we go. There we go. And hold. All right. Terrible person for demonstration purposes, but I'm glad you're as healthy as you are. That was awesome. That didn't appear to affect you at all. What that was just powdered milk. So whole powdered milk, whatever. That's awesome because he does the dairy, he does the whipping cream, he does whatever. We put a little bit of milk in his mouth. It doesn't seem to affect him anyways. So sorry I put as big a pump as I did. That kind of all came out at once.
We had to be sure.
Just to make sure. No, that worked great. So what I have here in my cup is 100% organic, like $6 for a small box of wheat stuff from Whole Foods, and then it's most expensive powdered milk I could find because I want it to be the best quality possible to see what might work or what might not work with someone. If they test bad to the best stuff I can find, they're probably not going to test well to the conventional stuff that you can find for 99 cents at Walmart or something. So that's how I try and do it. You guys want to try it just to see what happens? Come on up. Do you have a preference for which one you want to do?
No, I don't. I think I'll react to both, but
You think what?
I'll react to both.
Oh, okay. Go and lay on your back for me. You have a great accent. Where are you from?
Denmark.
Denmark?
Yeah.
I was thinking East Texas.
I just moved here in January.
Just January? Okay. So if I jab on your belly like this, no major issue. Okay, go here. A little bit there? On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say? 3 or so. Okay.
There was 4 or 5.
Okay, so 3, 4, 5, nothing, nothing. Bring your knee to your chest. There we go, that seems to work. This one hold. That one seems to work. Just drop this leg real quick. Hold that right there, don't let me spin it.
What?
Hold your leg there,
Yep.
and don't let me spin it. That did okay. And hold right here, and don't let me spin it. That does okay. Don't let me move your legs, or, I'm sorry, you just relax, don't let me, just relax. Oh, good internal rotation, that must eat well. Anybody want to admit that they don't eat really well at all in the period getting paid?
I know what it is.
I don't want to admit it.
There. Let's just see what happens. Relax. Actually, one more. Bring your knee to your chest. Knee to your chest. No, it didn't work at all. Hold there, don't let me spin it. That shut you off. Knee to your chest. And then hold there. You saw it?
I feel that I'm not as
Isn't that
strong.
weird?
Yeah.
Bend your knees forward. So this type of reaction, same, better, or worse than?
Same.
Same. Okay. Same, better here.
It's a little bit worse.
For someone that gets neurologic symptoms, muscles changing and going weak, you would have earned yourself about 6 months of grain-free. Like, you need to get off of all kinds of gluten and grain there because we don't want something like that happening. So when we jab under, it seemed worse, a little bit worse here. More importantly, things just went very, very weak for her. You were able to maintain strength without even trying. You maintained strength without trying, even though pain was a little bit worse. It seems like digestively speaking, you can start compensating for it. So she's getting to where her body is reacting and trying to catch up because we just showed it was weak. But both of you two were able to tolerate it better from a neurologic standpoint. It just may affect digestion more for you. You seem to do perfectly fine with it, so do whatever you want to do. In this situation, it was worse through digestive parameters and then started blowing muscles out to make them weaker. That's a bigger deal for me than someone that just gets some digestive things. So I would strongly discourage you from consuming meat or anything like that. That type of thing is what we're looking for. So we just use the body. We can see in 3 different people, 2 different people with the same food, different reactions. Sometimes muscles will stay strong, sometimes they won't, sometimes pain will get worse, sometimes it won't. It's impossible for me to tell you guys as a whole, everyone must eat this particular way and no other way. Because we're all unique individuals. We've all either adapted or been born in a certain way or whatever it might be to tolerate certain foods based off of genetics, ancestral heritage, or whatever it might be. Some people do really, really well in a vegetarian lifestyle. As long as they're able to avoid their grains and keep the fruits and veggies high and they fish on occasion. That's how they do it, and they thrive in that environment. Other people, they need steak with every meal, and they just go to town and they're fine with it. But they do really well with it. We can monitor and track it on blood tests, through physical exams, through symptomatic outcome. And the moral of that story is, the better you eat for your unique profile, the better you're going to be. And we can track it through whether it's physical exam stuff, or through blood tests, or through just how you're able to wake up and perform on a daily basis. You're not taking your afternoon lunches, you're not needing your afternoon energy drinks or coffee. You're able to do the things you want to do. Whether it's go roller skating with your grandkids, or go run through the woods at lunch break and do pull-ups and push-ups on the generators that are around or whatever they might be. To do the things you want to do is the most important aspect of why we would even want to do this modification of our diet. If we can't do what we want to do, that's where we start making changes. Nobody walks in and says, guess what, Chase, I want to have, like my hemoglobin A1C to be 6.2 or better. Nobody says that when they walk in. They walk in and they say, you know what, I'm starting to get numbness and tingling, and when I get dressed, my fingers don't work on the buttons anymore. And when I have to go home and take a nap, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, then again at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, then I'm out at 6, and then I sleep till 8, and then it's all miserable, and they want that to get better. So if that's your case, then change what you're eating or change what you're doing and look for changes, because you should be seeing them. If that's fine, if you're content with where you're at and you're okay with the symptoms you're at, then maybe you don't want to do changes now. I recommend people change now. Just start moving so they can have these experiences later in life and they can do the things they want to do and not be frustrated with their aches or their pains or their weight or their appearance or whatever. Okay? Any other questions or anything for me?
You find, I was just asking for a friend about fibromyalgia.
Yes.
Would you just start with getting rid of those 4 things?
It's a great start. A lot of times people who have fibromyalgia are also doing a diet things or artificial sweeteners. And those are great neurologic inflammatory things as well. So we want to cut those out. It depends. It's hard to say blanket-wise for everybody, but generally speaking, if someone walks in with fibromyalgia, I will have them get off of these 4 things. And depending on how the first visit goes, if I jab on them enough and everything hurts, and we might start adding from that list at the very beginning. It depends on where they stand and what they're looking for. That lady that came in with fibromyalgia originally came to see me because the other person that she was referred to is known as being someone who's like a dietary Nazi. It's just like, if you don't eat this, you're kicked out of my practice, and I don't want to accept smokers. And I don't want, he's kind of a intense fella. He's a good guy, but he's intense. And so I was the second string guy that has more of a laid back attitude, and they're like, go try this guy then. I hear he does similar things. And so she came in and we had her do all this stuff. But it's interesting because she needed 100% of what he was going to tell her to do anyways. She did, and she got better. Yes, ma'am.
We haven't talked about sugar.
About sugar? Sugar is the hidden thing that I tell people to get off of without telling them to get off of it. And it's because of the 60-20-20 rule that I give people at the beginning. If people are honest with themselves when they track things, then their 20% carbohydrates will not be exceeded. And how many of you know that a candy bar is healthy for you? No, we all know that junk is bad. And we all know we do it. So I kind of just circumvent the conversation by saying get off of sugar, by saying just keep your carbs under 20%. And if you can do that eating a Snickers bar and pancakes every morning with maple syrup and rice and whatever, then good luck. But if you can't do that, you're off of sugars anyways, and you're getting your carbohydrates from real food again. Yeah. And then we don't necessarily have to have me be the extra guy in the room that says get off of sugar. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Yes, ma'am. You had a question?
Sorry, really quickly. Are there any sneaky foods that cause insomnia that you wouldn't really think of? Aside from
Foods that cause insomnia?
Or types of things that might influence insomnia?
I would want to know better about the sleep pattern. Are you saying hard time falling asleep or fall asleep and wake up repeatedly throughout the night?
I'm asking for my mom, and I feel like she has a hard time falling asleep, but then she also wakes up a lot, and she also has sleep apnea.
Okay. Is she overweight also?
Yes.
So a hard and fast rule for someone like that would probably be dairy, but it's not always the case. She's got other issues going on with her adrenal glands and hormonal circadian rhythms that are probably affecting that more, and she just needs blanket anti-inflammatory approach of just saying get off of what you. And if she's not able to do that, because some people aren't. Some people you ask them to get off of a couple things, they get overwhelmed on day 2 and they throw their hands up and say I'm never doing this. It's no big deal. So we'd start slow, and dairy would probably be where I start with her. As a general rule, problems with mucus buildup from breast up, whether it's inability to lactate, snoring, eye goobers when you wake up, ears getting clogged, whatever, I think dairy first. So because of the sleep apnea type symptom, I would say, hey, maybe dairy should be where you would stop. If she was lactating and she wasn't producing as much, then we'd know for sure dairy is where you need to go, but different age bracket. Sounds like.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Cool? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any recommendations or reading material? I know there's been some studies for Hashimoto's and gluten.
Right?
I'm sorry, I can
I might. Let me look real quick. Here's one. I'll give you this paper that you can look at and see, and you can look at the reference, and that's one that talks about autoimmunity, gluten, and thyroid stuff. Yes. That's you.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I was just curious because is there any correlation between over protein consumption and thyroid issues, hypothyroid issues? Like, look, you reduced your carbs and the inflammatory stuff, but you went high protein and didn't go high fat. Could there be an issue?
Is this from a friend that has this, or no, I'm just joking. Like, do you know blood values? What this you're talking about?
Well, so I went paleo for a good couple of years, and I had increasing TSH, but then I've gone real high fat, and even to the point where I was on thyroid, and then it got off of it, and it's normalized. So I was wondering, could high protein be an issue there?
Potentially, yes. If y'all will bear with me, we'll talk about thyroid real quick. So your brain is sending messages out to control thyroid activity, specifically through dopamine and serotonin. And it's going to talk to your pituitary gland. Your pituitary is going to make TSH and go down and talk to your thyroid, which will be located here for the non-anatomists in the room. Your thyroid will then create T4 or T3. T3 is active, which means it works as soon as it comes out of the pump. T4 is inactive, which means it has to go talk to somebody else first to be changed and then work itself. About 94% of the thyroid hormone that is produced is inactive. The other 6% or so is going to be the active form. Active form jumps on a truck and is delivered to the cell and acts in two different ways. One, it affects DNA replication. So if your DNA isn't replicating and your cells aren't being mated like they're supposed to, it could be a thyroid issue. The second thing it makes is something called ATP, which is cellular gasoline or energy, so that you can get up and do the things you want. That's why thyroid is linked with metabolism. So if things genetically are being affected, or if energy production is being affected, there could be an issue there. Inactive thyroid stuff hops a ride and comes over to your liver, where it's turned into T3, and then it takes that same pathway of going and being activated again. So in essence, someone that potentially has thyroid things going on with them could have a problem from brain down to pituitary, pituitary down to thyroid, thyroid conversion into hormones, liver conjugation of those hormones, carrier protein activation, getting to the cell, DNA replication, or energy production. There's a spin-off of T3 that will go to the gut, and then eventually it'll end up doing that as well, which makes pattern number, where we're at, 8. It could be problematic. High protein diet, if gut health is being affected, could start disrupting this cycle, because now all of a sudden your T3 is not being delivered like it's supposed to, and so your body gets a feedback loop that says, guess what? Make more of this because our thyroid is not doing what it needs to do. So it can start generating and pumping out more stuff again. This guy will go up, your body will say, I'm obviously low thyroid, so the medication gets prescribed and brings it back down or whatever, but you potentially never address this, which means it could probably have just been a gut imbalance that you had at the time, either not breaking down the proteins well enough to be used and associated with all this other stuff that had to go on in that area, or just as a fluke with you and your body's being smart and saying, I probably don't need that much protein in my life, for you, even though it may not happen for everybody.
I was consuming a lot of protein, but I had a feeling that might have been it, and so when I kind of done my own test, got high fat, and it's normalized.
That'd be awesome, because that's going to be here and here, and that's great. But it would make me think of, if there's a breakdown somewhere, it's going to be in this area here, and liver will piggyback on the gut aspect of things as well. The hidden other one that's not talked about in this pathway is autoimmune thyroid, which really isn't a thyroid issue, it's an immune issue, but yet it's causing the spin out of these things. So something like gluten coming into the picture would cause, Pac-Man to come over here and eat up your thyroid, and now all of a sudden you get the thyroid presentation, but it's never really a thyroid issue. You can take all the Synthroid you want, or medication you want, and it's never really fixed the problem because this guy was going crazy. Then you get on the grain-free, low-inflammatory diet or whatever, these guys calm down, thyroid symptoms will metabolize all back to normal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool, any other questions? We'll call it a day. Thank you all very much for coming. This was fun.